hit record, and just do gallery view. Oh no, let's do speaker view. Right, okay. So after all the palaver of trying to get the Facebook Live, we finally come back down to earth and find ourselves in a conversation. So
Awesome.
when I mentioned about doing a Facebook Live like coaching session. Oops, just mute that. Okay. So we talked about doing that, and you said that there was something that you'd like to talk about. So what would be useful to you in this conversation?
Okay, well, I guess just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in the music industry for was in the music industry for 7 years as a sound designer. It's my own company with a friend of mine, and I left that 18 months ago in order to pursue get into a different industry. And what it is since I don't know, since the beginning of time, I've been into production side of things, so electronic production side of things, drum machines, samplers, things that go bloop, synths. That was my bag. So yeah, I mean, alongside that, I always felt like I kind of fell into that, because the dream right from the beginning was to be a superstar producer, a big DJ. And we're going back to when I was 16. And so there was this drive, there was this this passion to work out how do they create this stuff that I'm listening to. Like I was into the old rave jungle music, and so that's how I got into it. So there was this real burning passion to create my own music, and I always hear stuff in my head that I wanted to create. So I guess what would be useful for me is to reconnect to that. I seem to, when it comes to my own productions, I seem to sit down and get quite stuck quite quickly. Just to give you an example, I had a bit of time it was a week ago, and I sat down and thought, right, cool, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a melody to start with, I'm going to put some drums to it, and I got all excited. And within the space of 15 minutes, I'm kind of in like a frustrated kind of feeling, really, like not really knowing where to go with it. The same melody that I've written in the computer, it's looping around, and I'm in that realm of what we call loopitis. And there's something lost there. There's something. What actually happened? I remember what actually happened there is I really got stuck into the detail of creating this, like the synth sound that I was working with, from scratch. So that's the sound design part of me. So it's very detailed. It's very zoom in, tone, timbre, using effects. So it's kind of like that's really what I'm really enjoying, really good at. So that's almost like getting the microscope and zooming in on a very detailed process. And then when it comes to like what I see, the creation of a electronic piece of music, like a track, like 4 or 5 minutes long, that's the bigger picture. So it's kind of like I'm getting stuck in the detail first, and getting stuck creatively. and then that kind of feeds into not really getting much music done. And when I say that, I mean, like, you know, the music that I hear when I go to bed at night, the music that's in my soul. So if that gives you
Yeah.
a picture.
So you're hearing music from your soul.
I can hear drums. I can hear drums. You know, they're a real certain sound to them, and it's very energetic and choppy. You know, and
because the reason I asked is I'll play some stuff back and just see how it sounds to you, because you said that you wanted to reconnect with that creative part of you, and you said that you hear music coming from your soul all the time. I just wonder what you made of those two things, whether both those things are true.
hearing music from my soul is true all the time. Probably a bit of a grey area, but I do. I hear and feel the kind of stuff that I want to create.
So what are you putting it down to, that, you know, that not being able to result in a finished song?
As soon as you said that, what came up, the word expression came up for me. I don't know why. I mean, and along with that, a frustration of not being able to get whatever is inside of me out. So what follows on from that is, it seems what's playing back through the speakers, it's just not bloody good enough. It's not on point, man. It's not the real deal. Doesn't sound like that fiery shit that I've got inside of me.
How close have you got to that coming out? Has there been times when you felt that what you've wanted to come out has started to come out? I mean, like, be turned into music from an idea. How close have you got to it being how you want it to be?
That's a really good question, because how close has it got for it being how I want it to be? Now, if we just shift finishing music over to the side a second, what I'm talking about is a feeling that I get in the back of my head. It's like the pins and needles, goosebumps. And so when you ask me that question, I can be creating something and I'll get that. And I'll be like, oh, you know, I'll be really, really getting into it in the studio, and little heads bobbing up and down. I'll be like, oh, you know, and I'm imagining that I'm in the crowd, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's it, that's that groove. And so that's kind of like, that's awesome. So I get there, whatever that is, I get there. But that brings this paralysis, because it's like, I want to stay there. So it's like I'm a rabbit in a headlights listening to this loop going round, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is it. And so, like, things like arrangement and that kind of goes out the window. So it's almost like I'm getting a huge hit off that moment. And it sounds backwards, but so I mean that's a great question, because it really did. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm in production, and there'll be a melody, there'll be something which is really kind of dark and moody, you know, really up my street, heavy drums and sort of.
Steve, does the process of creating have to feel good?
Yeah. But I'm saying that in a kind of no way. I'm saying that in a no way. I mean, no one's ever asked me that. No one's ever asked me that question before.
I'm not. I tell you what, I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you're meant to suffer for your art. I'm not saying that. But what I heard, I'll tell you. Again, I'm not trying to like force my opinions down your throat. I'm just going to tell you what I'm hearing and just see how it sounds to you. Because I've heard that there are lots of times when you're driven to create. That's what it sounds like to me, that there is there's music that you're aware of, and you said it's music of your soul, you know. And there are also times when that drives you to do stuff, and then it sounds like, from where I'm sitting, that when you start to get hooked by an idea, then you want to turn it into a reality, then you have an unpleasant feeling of some kind. Is that what's going on?
There is an unpleasant feeling. And I mean, there's a couple of areas where I could say that arises, you know, and there'll be, you know, I could give one where, you know, I sit down at a computer, and I'll start to create, and I might get an uneasy feeling quite quickly, and that could or can take me down the realms of, oh well, you know, you haven't really finished much music, you've got a load of unfinished ideas, and so that can get me down that road. That's one scenario. Another scenario is where I've had, you know, what I was talking about before about this feeling of elation, you know, that can kind of start to wear off, because I can be aware that I've been listening to the same thing for a while, and then that kind of leads into, oh, okay, well, it's kind of time to get into the arrangement side of things now. I think that's where an uneasy feeling can arise as well. So yeah, that's a great question, because there are a few scenarios where that pops its ugly head.
So with the second one, then, if you got that feeling of elation and then it starts to subside, what are you putting that down to? How does it seem to you in that moment when that great, you know, that elation kind of stops or kind of changes? What's going on there for you in that moment?
I really don't know. Like, I really don't know. So just to be in it for a second. So I've got some drums going, there's a melody, there's a bass line. So there will be a kind of some form of a feeling or an image of a crowd, or being in the crowd, or playing out to a huge crowd. So it's a performance thing.
Mm.
There's a performance element to this, which is interesting. There's the feeling, there's the sense, there's the imagination of this, of playing this out, whatever it is, to a crowd. That's where this feeling of elation kind of really is intensified. And then at some point,
where's the feeling of elation coming from? Where does it look like it's coming from?
well, it looks like it's coming from the imagination of moving a crowd in some way. That's where it looks like my feelings coming from.
I'm asking that because I can imagine that would be very compelling feedback on the quality of your work. If it seemed like your feeling of elation was linked to the crowd, or the if it seemed like that amazing feeling was linked to the quality of the idea, or the potential of you as a musician, I can see that would be, it could seem like feedback if that feeling changed. Also, that the quality of the idea maybe had changed. And what I wanted to suggest is that even that feeling of elation, that feeling of elation is a thought, and it's a thought generated feeling that doesn't know anything about the potential of your idea. It's just come up out of you. It's come from somewhere, hasn't it?
Mm.
And the nature of that is that sometimes there are some greater feelings attached to ideas, and sometimes there are some not great ideas, great feelings attached to ideas. But the way that it sounds to me is that it's not just how it sounds, is that how it seems to be to me, that we have a constant flow of creative ideas. You could separate a separate category and call them creative ideas, but you could also zoom out a little bit and say every idea is creative by virtue of the fact that it's a thought, and that it's your mind's job to create it moment to second to second to second. Your experience of reality is being created. The whole thing's a creation. Everything you know of reality is a creation. So the only feedback you get on that is about how that reality feels. It's not about the quality of it. Because there's no shortage of ideas in anybody.
Mm.
That's not possible. That's just the way that the mind works, is that people, if you're alive, thought keeps happening. And we might not call them ideas, or we might not call them creations, but the truth is that it's all real-time creation. It's one big idea. Constant idea. constant flow of creativity. I don't mean it in a, you know, Steve's so great kind of way. I mean it in that's just how the mind works. You couldn't switch it off if you wanted to. You couldn't. I'm not saying that there aren't some ideas you might not want to pursue, or some ideas you might want to pursue, but following your feelings, because you know if it looks in the moment like your feelings are coming from the quality of your creations, then that's not a good place to be judging from.
Okay, so I think I'm here.
What are you hearing?
Well, it's tricky to describe, other than it seems to me like I'm putting a lot of weight on the feeling that I get, which I think is telling me how amazing the thing is that I'm listening to. It's tricky to explain, other than I mean, let's. So for me to understand it in my head, it's like if I was to reverse it and say I got into this really shitty feeling, you know, and it was really, really bad. Like I started producing, it was like, oh God, whoa, you know, it's like the opposite to the description that I've given you. Then it would seem ridiculous to use that as a measurement for what I was creating. So I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of weight being placed on the positive experience of being in that moment of elation and wanting more and more and more, like a drug.
Can I draw a distinction? I'm not saying that you don't want to assess the quality of the musical output. You know, I'm not just saying, you know, you can put out music that doesn't sound good, or you know, because there's a distinction here, because how music is sounding to you, how your performance is sounding, how your creation is sounding to you is a subjective thing. And that subjective, you know, we've all had the experience of creating something, listening back to it straight away and going, oh God, that's a pile of crap. And then the next day going, oh, that's not that bad. You know, when we're not in quite such a judgmental state of mind. So I'm not saying that, you know, it's possible to like produce something that's maybe sub, you know, what you're capable of producing, you know, and then to think, oh, that's not very good, and then the next day to think, oh, you know, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I'm not saying that some, you know, musical ideas as compositions, you know, couldn't be better, but what I'm saying is that, you know, it's helpful to be able to, you know, use our subjective, you know, ear to be able to weigh up what's good or bad about something. But to think that that subjective ear is objective, and to think that because I'm feeling good, that means that it's a good piece of music, or because I'm feeling bad, that means it's not, you know, a good piece of music.
I think I just yeah, a bit of a light bulb. Okay, so it seems it's like in this elation, and then taking that as an indication of how good I am in some way. at being a producer or a performer or a whatever. Similarly, when I'm kind of stuck, you know, in a trance, listening to a thing going over and over, and I'm in a, you know, like a, not in a great feeling or a sort of a, I guess, a bit of frustration. Again, that can sort of indicate to me, well, you know, I'm not a great producer, or I'm not like a, do you know what I mean? It's
I do know what you mean.
so it's
I
like
know,
that, taking it personally.
mate. I know exactly what you mean, because it's the most, when we feel, yeah, if I use the word insecure, if we when we feel insecure and we're kind of self-doubting, or we're like kind of thinking, when it feels personal like that, then we can't be aware of ourselves generating the experience. We both, you can't feel secure in your own skin and for it to feel personal. Those two things won't happen at the same time. It's going to be one or the other. It's either you're kind of in it and you're not taking everything personally, or you are taking things personally, and it's very, very, it's very common. Yeah, and I this is probably the biggest shift that I had, I guess, from looking in the direction of how my mind works. Is to notice that, my music isn't me. Your music isn't you. You're where the music comes from.
Your music isn't you.
Because if you have a bad idea, that doesn't mean that you are bad. It means you had a bad idea. And if you had a good idea, it doesn't mean that you are good. It means that you had a good idea. And the constant underneath all of that is you. That and when I say mean you, I mean the real you, not the story of I'm a musician, I'm not a musician, I'm a good musician, or I'm a producer, or I'm a composer, or I am a performer, or I'm not a performer, or I'm a professional, or I'm not a professional. That's all a creation as well. All of those things are made by you. They are not you. And what is making all of those creations is this is this powerhouse of ideas, which is the human mind, which is thought. I mean the capacity for thought, which makes the thoughts. It's the formless taking form. It's potential coming into being. It's the unmanifest manifesting. You're the unmanifest. You're the potential that makes the ideas.
Yeah, because okay, so there's something, just a little thing just popped in there when you said, in my mind, when you said something like you're unmanifest coming into I can't remember what you said, mate, but it was like into manifestation.
The unmanifest manifesting.
Yeah. And it occurred to me that the unmanifest, like what you're saying, where the potential is non-judgmental there. It's tough for me to explain, other than it's like, oh shit, yeah, there's no way like that part of me would judge and critique itself, good or bad. That's what just popped in my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, that's a different way to look at this.
Well, you're not the judgment, you're the capacity to judge, because a judgment is a creation too.
Hmm.
And it's useful to be able to judge. Just like I said, it's useful to be able to judge whether you want to go with an idea or not. But the judgment is an idea too, and that's subject to change. You can judge yourself harshly one day and hear something differently at another time. I've got plenty of pieces of music that I just didn't get for the first 20 years of my life, and then something struck me because of, I don't know why, but some music touches me in a way that it didn't used to touch me. And what does that say? It's just the way that I'm thinking about it right now. Is it possible that I might not be touched by it in the same way in the future? I'm sure. Well, it's the same for the stuff that you create. Doesn't mean that just because you created it, you're going to have to always love it. You just created it, But if you think that you need to have a feeling of elation before you finish anything, then you may get stuff done that way, but it blocks out a whole load of other possibilities of like capturing the ideas, for example, in some kind of voice recorder, and just going through them with a clearer head at a later point, for example, or beatboxing stuff, or like putting together a load of stuff and thinking about how it could all flow together. If there's a little bit of distance there from the feelings, from the ideas, and just seeing what you can do with them, rather than worrying too much about what they are, then it's like a kid playing with toys on a living room floor. It's like, it doesn't really matter which order the trains go in. It's just like, mess about with them, see what comes up.
Yeah,
it's a game.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that, because there's definitely an element of Steve taking himself a bit too bloody seriously here.
You think?
Oh gosh.
A wise man once said, "Just play." I think I heard that term come from somewhere. I don't know quite where that was.
Oh, I don't know who said that. But it's so true. It's so true. Like in a conversation about creativity, and what we've been talking about, and to get to that, I mean, there's so much, like, I've heard, but it just made me chuckle then. Oh yeah, this is the game. This is what you enjoy. This is what you love. You've been taking yourself a bit seriously, It's that old. Yeah, that was gold. I was like, oh yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great place to maybe pause things, and I want to know what's going on. Then I want to hear. I want to hear what comes out of this. Will you post us something that you make, but at the right time? I'm not saying I'm not giving you a deadline, but
yeah, I'd love to.
I don't necessarily mean a finished thing, by the way, either.
Mm.
That,
Well, there
doesn't
are
have to be a finished thing.
opportunities. Sorry. I was saying that there are opportunities. I've just got a new job, a new role, for example, and there are creative opportunities in that to create pieces of music for that and sound effects and stuff. So that's cool. Do you know what? I'm really interested in if I could call it like what's in my soul type. Those drums that I've been hearing, like get that, see where that goes after this call, and then when the time is right. I mean, I know that over the weekend I've got some production time, and part of getting on this call is to do stuff. So I will be posting something.
Awesome.
It will be on my SoundCloud page, and then I'll let you know beforehand, but then I could just share it in the group. So I mean, roughly, it's good to have an idea of when I would do that. So I kind of aiming for a couple of weeks, let's say.
Okay.
If that would be good.
Well, I'll post this video in the group. So the 540 people or however many are in the group, I'm sure one of them will hold you accountable. So, all right.
Well, it's really good to be. It's really good that you've said that, because I now feel like,
and it's good that it's visible and it's all public. So we're cheering you on, mate.
Oh, brilliant! I'll go. Do you know? For some reason, I can hear the magic roundabout in my head now. I don't know why.
Don't judge.
There we go.
Right,
cool.
Nice
all right.
Okay,
well,
good stuff.
Thank you so much. It's been really useful.
Pleasure. All right, good stuff. So speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon, Nick. Thank you very much.